Hi folks, just doing a quick recording about the courts. Now obviously the main lecture this week is focused on the courts, courtesy of a couple of fabulous guest lecturers that we have. So I'm not going to do a huge amount on this. I'm just going to talk quickly through a couple of issues around the courts. So we learned a little bit in the second week about the histories of youth justice and around how a separate system was created for young people because they didn't think they were getting, the young people were getting fair treatment. You know, the young people were being treated like adults and things like that. So the Children's Court came about in order to deal with children's matters and all of that sort of stuff, so that children could be tried separately from adults. The adult process was considered harmful, degrading and brutalizing for children and young people. The child saving movement was a big part of this, and remember we talked about that in week 2. Young people it was hoped that because they were part of a children's court, they would receive less harsh treatment overall. Even so, it was kind of based on existing courts in terms of summary jurisdiction and the way the process went and all of that sort of stuff, but they gave out less severe penalties, also added the power to sentence to reformatory industrial schools, which is, you know, we talked about the administrative discretion that those particular institutions had in week 2. And they had a whole bunch of options in terms of fines being released or being committed to a reformatory or an industrial school. But we kind of get the sense that's summarized in this particular cartoon, and I really love this cartoon for this week. You know, the lawyer's saying that is so way more than we need to know, and the judge is like, whatever. You know, using very informal language, that sort of stuff. There's a whole raft of different things they do in order to protect young people in children's court processes. Most jurisdictions now actually have specialist children's courts in each city. The children's courts obviously have jurisdictions over summary matters, and there's other types of matters which go to different courts. The young people can elect to have indictable matters, though, heard in the Children's Court if they would like to. Generally, other matters go to the Supreme Court, depending on what's happening, or the Magistrates' Court as well, depending on their age and so forth. Hearings are typically conducted in private, although I'm not sure if that's the case in Queensland at the moment. I'm pretty sure the young person is typically named, and their names are listed and all that sort of stuff, and they can be named in the paper because the court is a public process. There's a little bit of a good example is Victoria, and I think this is still up there. I checked it a couple of weeks ago and it was working. See, it's got down the bottom, let's take a tour. It's got this fantastic virtual tour of the Children's Court that you can have a look at, and it shows you the inside and the different rooms and all of that sort of stuff, so people know what they're doing know what they're going to see or experience before they get there. Now, in this particular court, there's obviously legislation that guides the way it works, and I've got a link to that there. There's a family division. There's applications that are made regarding the protection and care of children and young people at risk, and of course applications for intervention orders. There's also the criminal division, which is different to the family division because it's relating to criminal offending by young people and children. There's also the Children's Koori Court, where matters relating to criminal offending by Koori children and young people other than sexual offences, they're allowed to hear those matters in the Children's Koori Court, so that Indigenous young people are getting a better supported process overall. If you get a chance, have a look at the tour because it's really interesting. I'm just hoping, not crazy, that it's actually still there. The Magistrates' Court also looks at a lot of the matters involving young people too. They hear less serious offences overall. However, in Queensland, most of the matters are heard by the Children's Court. Again, this depends on the age of the young person involved and so forth. There's a whole bunch of different types of court roles which you'll learn more about today, so I'm not going to go into a huge amount of detail with this. But most importantly, this is the type of support that's provided by the Youth Advocacy Centre. Damien Bartholomew is our guest lecturer this week, and he is from the Youth Advocacy Centre. It's an entity which responds to both individual and systematic issues as interrelated in terms of the way that it does things. It's about approaching young people's issues from a holistic perspective, where their needs and problems are often related to their offending behaviour. So all of the different needs and problems are usually documented in different types of pre-sentence reports and so forth, which are presented to the court, so that then the people in the courts can consider that in relation to the types of offences that they've been involved in relation to their age, and a whole bunch of other issues. So we've got the young person, the solicitor, the magistrate, the departmental court officer, the police prosecutor, the court clerk, and of course the youth worker, and this is the role that is typically support provided by the Youth Advocacy Centre. So in terms of problematising courts, obviously sometimes there's a lack of recognition of diversity. Even though most young people are Indigenous that come through the court, they are unfortunately also more likely to receive harsher penalties. So our system doesn't necessarily support them in a way which is going to be good for them down the track. Not only that, but there are also a massive amount of literacy issues. So for instance, if we look at this diagram, which is why I've put it up, it demonstrates the real issue with literacy around the world in terms of different areas and all of that sort of stuff. So what they're trying to do is get all children reading across the world ultimately, and these organisations, USAID, Australian Aid, World Vision, etc., are working together to do this. At the moment, 793 million adults worldwide, that's 1 out of 4 adults, cannot read these words on this particular slide. 84% of adults of illiterate adults live in just 35 countries. So you can see that they are overrepresented in terms of developing countries and so forth. So, and there's a whole bunch of other really specific information that that goes into it, such as a child born to a mother who can read is 50% more likely to survive past the age of 5. Countries that have experienced surges in literacy rates have simultaneous increases in their gross domestic product. Financial security, 171 million people could be lifted out of poverty if all students in low-income countries left school with basic reading skills. That's the equivalent to a 12% drop in the number of people living on less than $1.25 per day. So all these things are really significant issues that impact on whether or not a young person, how they go in court basically, because it will depend on their literacy levels in terms of whether or not they can understand the process, whether they can understand the conditions that have been placed on them, and all of that sort of stuff. Okay, that's all I'm going to say on the courts. I'll hopefully see you in the guest lecture. See you later.